Guys, hello again. Thanks for tuning in. So, today I want to talk about sort of what happened when I dyed and I bleached my hair before I installed my locks. But before I get into that, I want to say thank you for people who have engaged with my channel, people who've subscribed, who've liked, commented. I really appreciate it. I'm glad that the content is helpful. I know that it is a struggle to find a lot of videos to kind of compare and contrast when you're going into your starter lock journey, and that is especially why I want to talk about what happened when I dyed my hair, because you know, you're told to kind of like, if you're somebody who's interested in dyeing, right, you're like told to either wait until after you've installed your locks, like years into your journey when your locks have matured and everything, and then you can play with your dye. Or, you know, you're told that you should dye your hair before you install, so that it is not a problem what your hair color looks like afterwards, that you can be, you know, happy and satisfied with your locks, with your starter locks thereafter. And or like, if you should even dye at all, right? Because at the end of the day, the suggestion is always actually not to dye your hair, let alone bleach, because it is one thing to dye your hair like a reddish tint like I did with mine, and it is another thing to completely bleach it like I did at the front. So initially I'm just going to talk about what happened to my loose natural hair when I dyed and I bleached it. And I think right off the bat, what I noticed was that my curls were just less coily. You know, as somebody who had 4C, kinky, textured tight coils, and like sometimes I would even call it a 4Z, because it was on another level of kinkiness, you know. So as somebody who had always known myself to have that type of like coarse hair, it was so strange to see it, and especially at the front where I bleached it, to see it so wavy. Like the curl pattern literally changed. The hair was less coily and it was like waves. Yo, I'm bright. What is happening? Yo, it's like trying to make me white. Okay, I think we're fine. So basically, yeah, my hair was less coily, and I'll show you a picture over here. So then another thing that I noticed with this loose natural hair, especially the very front, again where I bleached it, was that it was super dull. So it was not only like, cool, I'm rocking a new pattern now, like, oh, it was literally like just, it would lay flat, and it wasn't as lively anymore. And I was always comparing it to the other parts of my hair that I had dyed, right? And this was not the case with the brown dye. It was literally only the case with the hair that I had bleached at the very front. You know, on the other hand, I argued with myself. I thought, okay, you know what? It could be just a thing where your curl pattern is different, right? The hair at the very front is much more looser than the hair at the crown of my head versus the hair at the back. Like, people have their different textures, right? It's not one thing all over. But guys, had my hair been always dull, I would have noticed it beforehand, before bleaching, right? And that's the part that just kind of made me concerned. No, it's not a thing where I'm just noticing that my coil pattern has actually changed, or that I didn't notice that it was more wavy or whatever at the front. It is literally a case where the hair doesn't act and behave the same way that it did. It was dull, like I said. Also noticed that what bleach did was dry out my hair a lot. This is also not something new that you hear. You hear a lot of people talking about the dryness after they dye and bleach their hair, and so I was kind of prepared for that. But you know, you do your hair regime, you take care of it, you do your moisture, whatever. But I noticed that the hair at the front again was not behaving the same way that it was to the rest of the hair. So the blonde locks were taking much longer to absorb the moisture, as well as retain the moisture. If I spritz my hair in the morning or whatever, if I style it, my brown locks are going to stay much more moist than the front of my hair where I had dyed it. So essentially, like, because I was ready for this, I knew, okay, I would have to really take care of the locks at the front, you know, in terms of their dryness. So I was kind of prepared for this. Okay, and then the next thing is that we just need to ask ourselves what should be happening to our starter locks, right? What categorizes as phase, right? It is usually one, budding. And with budding, I noticed that the hair at the front, the bleached tips, are much more frayed. They, I don't know how to describe it, but they're stretched out at the tips, and it doesn't look like they're as compact and as springy as the other hair, which brings me to believe that perhaps they're not going to readily bud as the other hair will. Which means that they might take longer to lock. I don't know. These are just kind of like theories. Okay, and then the next thing you look out for when it comes to starter locks is your shrinkage, right? And here, I would say I haven't really noticed much of a significant difference that I would note, you know, between the bleached locks and the dyed locks. However, it goes back to that thing again where I don't know, but do I have a different curl pattern at the front? And that's why I noticed that the hair around, you know, the top, the crown, all the way to the back, it shrinks more versus the hair at the front. Because also, I have a lot of hair at the front of my head, and the hair at the back, it's always shrinked. Like that's always been the case. So I really don't know. Is it a dye thing, or is it just a typical Portia hair thing? I'm not too worried about this at this point. It is more concern about the budding at this stage for my starter locks. So the next thing that we're supposed to notice with our starter locks is frizz, right? What I did notice is that the bleached hair at the front does tend to frizz more. Like I said in, you know, my starter lock installation video, that I have a lot of frizz at the front, and so it might be caused by the dye, and I have no clue. But if it's frizzing, then that's fine. The same way, like if it's shrinking, it's fine. Okay, and then the last thing that I know of which characterizes starter locks is kind of the dryness that will happen inevitably, and that it should happen. And again, like if the locks at the front which are bleached are drying, and this helps the locking process, then I'm not gonna complain, you know. It is what it is. So okay, which brings me back to then that question of, you know, should you actually dye before you install, or should you dye way after you have done your starter locks and, you know, you've let them mature and so on? And I think I'm gonna say decide for yourself, because I'm not an expert. I'm literally just like some potato with a phone on the internet, and yeah, like you need to seek rather expert professional advice in terms of these things. But I know that we like to compare each other's journeys, right? Because there's so little information about this elsewhere, unless you're going to see somebody, a professional. Like, so if you got the money, if you got the means, do it. I think, me personally, knowing what I know now, I would not bleach my hair before I do my starter locks. I would still dye it. I think the dye is fun, I like it, but I wouldn't go as far as bleaching. Again, it's one thing to, you know, color your hair in a relatively darker color versus completely ridding it of color, such as the bleaching process. We all know that's super damaging, right? So I wouldn't do that again. Am I going to bleach my hair in the future? Hey, listen, if it's possible, diffs. I'm there, you know. 5 years down the line, whatever, I'm going to see what the options are and how healthy the process would be for my locks. At the end of the day, bleaching is never going to be 100% healthy, I think. But it has done this window, and yeah, like I like my color. So I think that's just kind of what I have to say about that. Again, no loctician, so take whatever I say with, you know, a critical view. But that said, do hope this is of help. Guys, I want to thank you again for watching, and I hope to see you again.